Our comforting conviction that the world makes sense rests on a secure foundation, our almost unlimited ability to ignore our ignorance. Daniel Kahneman wrote that, and it is one of the most quietly devastating things ever said about the human mind, because it means the confidence you feel, the certainty that you read a situation correctly, that your first impression was right, that you know what someone meant, is not a sign that you understood. It is a sign that your brain filled in the gaps and stopped asking questions. Thinking, Fast and Slow is a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist's life work distilled into one book. It does not just describe how we think, it reveals how often we are wrong without knowing it. Here are the 5 most important lessons and why each one changes how you move through the world. Lesson 1. Your brain makes decisions before you are even aware of them. Kahneman describes a simple experiment that should unsettle anyone who believes they are in charge of their own reactions. Participants were shown a series of words: Florida, bingo, gray, words associated with old age. Afterward, they walked down a hallway. Without any instruction, without any awareness, they walked measurably slower. Their bodies had already responded to a concept their conscious minds had not registered. That is System 1, Kahneman's name for the fast, automatic emotional layer of thinking that runs almost continuously beneath awareness. System 1 is fast, automatic, frequent, emotional, stereotypic, unconscious. It decides before you decide. It reacts before you think. You scroll through a feed and feel suddenly inadequate. You walk into a room and feel unwelcome. You hear one sentence and your whole mood shifts. You assume these are your conclusions. Often they are your brain's first draft, unreviewed and unquestioned. The sentence to carry, just because I feel it instantly does not mean it is true. Lesson 2. You are more influenced by confidence than by accuracy. Kahneman makes a finding that should change how you listen to people forever. Declarations of high confidence mainly tell you that an individual has constructed a coherent story in their mind, not necessarily that the story is true. Confidence is presentation. It is not evidence. Yet we are wired to treat it as evidence. The person in the meeting who speaks first and loudest gets believed. The person who hesitates, who reflects, who qualifies, who says, "I'm not certain," gets talked over. Not because they are less right. Because certainty feels like competence, even when it has no relationship to accuracy. Experts who acknowledge the full extent of their ignorance may expect to be replaced by more confident competitors who are better able to gain the trust of clients. So the most honest people in the room are often the most overlooked. The sentence to carry, loud certainty, is not the same as truth. Lesson 3. Your mind creates a complete story from incomplete information, and then trusts it completely. Kahneman introduces one of the most clarifying concepts in the book: WYSIATI. What you see is all there is. Your brain does not wait for the full picture before forming a judgment. It takes whatever information is available, builds the most coherent story it can from that information, and then treats that story as reality. The confidence that individuals have in their beliefs depends mostly on the quality of the story they can tell about what they see, even if they see very little. You send a message and get no reply. Within minutes, your brain has written a full narrative. They are upset, you said something wrong, the relationship is damaged. But you have no information. You have silence. Your mind just despises a gap, so it filled one. The interpretation felt like a conclusion. It was fiction. The sentence to carry, "I don't have the full picture, and the story I'm telling myself is not a fact." Lesson 4. You fear loss more than you value gain, and it is quietly running your decisions. This is the insight that won Kahneman the Nobel Prize. and it is the one most people feel in their bodies before they can name it. In experiment after experiment, he demonstrated that the pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. Losing $50 hurts more than finding $50 feels good. People are loss averse. They are more likely to act to avert a loss than to achieve a gain. This asymmetry shapes decisions in ways that are almost invisible. You stay in a situation longer than you should because leaving feels like losing. You do not apply for the role, pitch the idea, or say the thing. Not because you do not want the outcome, but because the risk of loss feels heavier than the possibility of gain. You choose the known discomfort over the unknown chance. Loss aversion is not weakness, it is wiring. But once you see it, you can ask, am I staying here because this is right, or because leaving feels too much like losing something? The sentence to carry, avoiding loss is not the same as choosing what is right for me. Lesson 5. Slowing down your thinking is where your real power lives. System 2. The slow, deliberate, effortful mode of thinking is the part of your mind that can actually examine a thought rather than just react to it. It is where you ask, is this true? Where did this feeling come from? What am I missing? The problem, Kahneman explains, is that System 2 is tiring and the brain resists using it. A general law of least effort applies to cognitive as well as physical exertion. If there are several ways of achieving the same goal, people will gravitate to the least demanding course of action. Laziness is built deep into our nature. So the brain defaults to fast. It jumps to conclusions because conclusions feel like relief. But the decisions that most shape your life, who to trust, what to commit to, what you actually believe versus what you have been told to believe, those decisions deserve the effortful mode. The premise of this book is that it is easier to recognize other people's mistakes than our own. Slowing down does not make you less decisive. It makes you less manipulable. The sentence to carry, I don't have to rush my decisions. Here is what most people miss about this book. They read it and feel slightly unsettled, as if the rug of their own rationality has been pulled out. But that unsettlement is the point, and it is a gift. Because once you understand how your mind works, the shortcuts it takes, the stories it tells, the certainty it manufactures, you stop being a passive recipient of your own thoughts. You become someone who can notice a reaction, hold it for a moment, and ask whether it deserves to be trusted. A reliable way to make people believe falsehoods is frequent repetition, because familiarity is not easily distinguished from truth. The opinions you have absorbed about yourself, the limitations you have accepted, the narratives you stopped questioning because they became familiar. None of those are facts. They are just stories your System 1 stopped bothering to examine. The moment you slow down long enough to see that, everything becomes negotiable.